Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah? All right. First of all, thank you for attending. Thank you for being here in Brussels and online. I don't forget all these people watching us. Yes, indeed. The key words for me in this session will be effectiveness, elevation, technology, and value. Keep those words in mind, because you will see them in every slide, probably not in every minute, hopefully not, but at least on a regular basis. So, having said that, whenever I have the chance, like today, to present on what I'm doing, or what I've been doing for a long time, thanks for reminding 30 years, so it's great. It doesn't make me younger, but okay. Actually, you know, I like to introduce this session with a few points I'm going to make. And these are the points. These points are, to be honest with you, are my daily bread. That's what I'm doing nearly every day of the week, sometimes 7 days a week now. It's all about, of course, balancing technology and human, automation and augmentation, value and quality. And I will tell in a minute why I stopped using quality a few years ago for a number of reasons. Hopefully you will understand and you will agree with why I decided not to use quality as a word anymore, but to use effectiveness. It's also part of the requirements on the buyer side. When I'm talking to buyers, people in the private sector, decision makers, these people are looking for value. First of all, they look for effectiveness, but of course, quality is part of that. So quality is not disappearing. I insert quality, or I embed quality into effectiveness and, of course, value creation later on. And these are the 5 points I would like to make today, I would like to convey, and hopefully you will have some questions at the end, so I look forward to that. But first, let's have a question for you. And the question is, of course, we all know about the acronym AI, artificial intelligence. But what you, personally, what you would give this acronym a meaning if it was you to define AI? There are 4 proposals. Some of them are positive, some of them are less positive. So just curious to see what people think about what AI truly is, being, of course, beyond artificial intelligence. So let's have a look. Augmented is running, okay. Okay. My personal preference is augmented intelligence. So if you are with me, that would be great. If you are not with me, it's great as well, and we can discuss. Okay, it looks like, yeah, augmented, adapted intelligence. So actually, yeah, it's not so bad. I think you probably like AI in this room, which is great for me, because if you hate AI, you might not like the rest of my presentation. So let's face it, and yes, augmented is winning, let's say. All right, let's move on. Yesterday, the question came up on a regular basis, what is quality? Of course, there are many definitions, so I'm not going to open the debate again. I'm going to tell you what quality and effectiveness are for me in a minute, but the first question that I prefer to be asked, and the first question that I have to ask myself, to my clients today, just like the first question when I was working in multinationals, was why? The why of quality. And why is quality important? Why does it matter? And I like this quote, actually, because this quote is all about human communication. And translation quality is about enabling people to communicate between themselves properly, effectively, timely. But actually, of course, now, these days, it's more than that. It's also about enabling people, humans, to communicate with machines. And even more now, because I'm working on a project in Japan, which is machine between machines, machine to machine, M2M is becoming a new acronym. Typically Japanese, you might say, because they're crazy about robots over there. But Okay, it will come here at some point. Maybe 10 years from now, you will have a robot here, not me anymore. But actually, okay, this is the short answer to the question, why is quality important? Now, the longer answer is, for me, including quality into value chains. And this is why it's really important to look at value from a broader perspective. A bit like this picture, which I like. When you look at this lady, of course, if you look from above, you will see that she has a hat, but you don't see her. Quality for me is the lady, in a way, or the hat, depending on how you look at it. But the actual perspective that I have is broader. It's not just vertical, it's horizontal. So, when you see, this is a sort of journey to value creation. There are, for me, two stages, which I group into one, usually, but for the purpose of this presentation, I kept that separated. So quality is typically for reach and output. In my experience, you might disagree, but that is what I've been living with for a number of years. Effectiveness is, of course, for resonance and outcome. This is where, of course, content has a job to do. Some people think that I'm crazy when I'm saying that, when I say content has a job to do, but I mean it because every document, every piece of content that is created, translated, delivered, has something to do, to convince, to sell, to train, to entertain. There is always a purpose. And that's where effectiveness comes to play as an outcome. And then there is value creation, where the real performance for many buyers is there. And value creation is, well, it's not difficult to define, but it's quite interesting for me to look at and to start with that, with clients and with buyers' organizations in general. I know peers, many peers agree with me on the buyer side that value is really where you measure the real performance. It's not just about money, because I know people jump into the monetary question. They say, well, okay, value is about, making money, saving cost, or, going faster, etc. But value is much more complex than that. In the life science industry, for instance, where I'm working in, value is often trust with patients. It's often compliance, making sure that new drugs are compliant on time, because otherwise there is a lot of money that is wasted. So value creation is really where many buyers see the value of content, and as a result of that, they see the value of translation. So that's why I embed quality and effectiveness. I group them to say, yes, this is the first step, the first station in the journey to value creation. And it's not just semantic, it's not just about philosophical considerations, it's also very operational. Why? Because value creation is typically where, as I said, performance is measured. But actually, this, well, in my experience at least, this is often leading to discussions, debates, sometimes violent debates, about, for instance, pricing models. Not cost per word, but value deserves more than just cost per word. Value is not just based on commodity, it's based on, outcome, not just output. It's also based on, on the real, I would say, the real effectiveness of the workflow. So for instance, if translation is not working well, if quality is not delivered, sometimes it's because there is indeed a lack of quality, but it's not always the case. Sometimes there is quality, but it's not perceived, it's not received by the buyers. And that's a shame. It's a source of frustration. I remember 30 years ago when I was a translator myself, sometimes I was saying, I did my job, I did my best, and it's still not recognized. It's one of the reasons why I moved to the buyer side, but that's my life, so not talking about that. But it's more like focusing on really what matters for buyers, for decision makers. It's of course I'm telling you that in a very commercial framework. So I know in other frameworks it might be a little bit different, but I think that value is for everyone. I think we all have to create value in this room. Otherwise, I don't know where we work, for what we work. So there is really a sense of value creation for all of us. And that's why I firmly believe that quality is absolutely necessary, but I put it into perspective, not just what, for a number of years, I think somebody mentioned yesterday that, quality has been measured for years and years about, number of words, million of words, and true translation errors versus amendments, etc. All that is still very important. But these are, for buyers, these are more vanity metrics. Vanity metrics can still be used, but it's not enough. For buyers, they look for value because they need value for their money. I know I'm talking about money here, but we should all talk about money, by the way. Everyone. Thank you. One person agrees. That's great. Good start. Thank you very much. All right. So hopefully you see what I mean now with effectiveness. It's really, I'm going to use today quality and effectiveness to please everyone. But usually when I'm talking to people, I mention just effectiveness. Because actually it's really important to set the stage for other people, not for us here, language experts, language professionals, but we have to talk the language of our stakeholders. Of course, clients in the private sector, but also stakeholders, the public, for the public sector. So it's relevant for everyone, I believe. But okay, can disagree at the end, just don't hesitate to shout on social media. So now moving to the what. What is quality? And every time I have to define that to non-experts, to non-language experts, so probably you here, you will agree immediately with what I'm going to show you now, but I have a doubt, so I will still show it. The code, for me, the code of quality in translation is the baseline that you see here. It's about linguistic, cultural, and functional effectiveness. When I say I, it's not me, it's not Bruno HERRMANN. I said, the people, someone I want to deliver my content to. So when I say I need my content in my language with the right spelling, the right grammar, the right syntax, it's obvious. If I see something, just like you probably, if I see something with a spelling mistake or multiple spelling mistakes in an email, I may think that it might be phishing. Or if I see something that is not grammatically correct, I may just say this guy is trying to sell me something, but he's not even able to write it properly. So, linguistically, fine. Cultural effectiveness is really important too. And this is, of course, something that all of you, I'm looking at everyone, all of you are the ambassador of culture. You convey culture, cultural messages, cultural emotions with translation quality. When you localize, when you translate, when you transcreate content, you are, of course, you should, if you don't do it, it might be risky, but you should really think about, of course, the cultural dimension of content. It's not just linguistic, it's cultural. And the last part of the code is functional effectiveness. A few weeks ago, I was called by a client, and this client was telling me that he had a big problem with a new application. So it was an e-commerce site selling luxury goods to Asia. And so they designed a brand new application. They spent a lot of money for great translation. So perfect cultural, linguistic content. However, the content was not working well on the application. Guess what? Because the QA of these localized applications were done by Europeans who didn't speak Thai, who didn't speak Japanese, who didn't speak Indonesian, and of course the whole content was spoiled. Obviously, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, but this is to say that language experts, in my mind, in my experience, have to be, to some extent, functional experts as well. If you work on the translation of applications, you might become, even without willing it, or without knowing it, you might become a functional expert as well, just because you are in charge of translating an application that has to work in different environments, in different ecosystems. And of course, you have to make that work. So that is, for me, the baseline. The baseline is this 3 buckets, or, you know, at least, I wouldn't call that a coin, because a coin has only 2 sides. But okay, let's see that this is really where we start in terms of quality. Again, if you disagree, if you agree, just let me know. So, talking about technology. Technology is about, you know, turning challenges into opportunities. I know that for most of us, technology is not just a great help, it's not just a great tool, but sometimes it's a friend that is annoying, because it's challenging us. And I like this quote from a famous CEO of an ad agency that is telling us that, of course, by using AI, we could be better than, you know, what we are today. But of course, we as humans, we have to stay better. We have to be better with AI. The sentence is really important here. And why I like this quote is simply because language technology is really, for me, about automation. Let's make it work. Yesterday, there was, I think, a discussion, you know, about should or could machines be creative. I think that, for the moment, generation is on the technology side, but creation is on the human side. So I think that language technology, and this is what we do at LT-Innovate, if I can make 2 seconds promotion. In LT-Innovate, we help, or we discuss with buyers and solution providers of language technology about, you know, we want to discuss what is technology doing to create value, to be effective. Again, I'm circling back on the same words. Of course, it is about translation, what we are discussing today, but of course, language technology is doing much, much more than that. I just put here a few examples of typically what I have to deal with in terms of language tech implementation. But beyond that, of course, the tech challenge is about automation. It's not just about automation that needs to be implemented, it's about automation that needs to be balanced with humans. So the balance is the challenge. It's not the tech. I think that there are a number of great tools available, great solutions, but it's I would say the success or the lack of success is going to depend on how you use those solutions. So it's always easy and sometimes unfair to blame technology for being bad and trying to replace humans, etc. But it's up to us humans to be really using it for what it does best, which is automation. On the other side, if I can, you know, use that word here, when I talk about elevation, of course, it's for humans. And what humans can do with language tech is definitely about elevation. It's to benefit, it's to leverage automation to elevate what they do. Going back to my previous point is actually to demonstrate that language tech alone will probably not create value, much value. It's language tech and humans that is going to create value. And that is very different, because in many discussions or in many articles, I still see, is it technology or humans? Or, I hate that word. It's humans and technology, not or. Or is exclusive and is inclusive. Well, you should know that word, actually. But actually, this is really where I see the tech effectiveness coming to play, where, you know, you have solutions available, which is great, and then you have us, humans, language experts, who have a number of opportunities to be better, to augment what we do, to complement what we do, but actually it's a challenge and it's not easy. So I know the frustration, I know the concerns, I know about all that, but obviously I still, you know, in one of my posts I said that today I would convey some positive messages. That's my first positive message, is language tech is something that you can, if you really balance it right, that you can really use as an elevator, as a value creator. And sometimes you can even use tech to demonstrate value creation better than without tech. Okay. So, still about the what. Of course, I'm going to talk about AI in a minute. Don't worry. I promised that I would touch on AI. But again, another quote, which for a change, I don't fully agree with. I do agree with the first part of the sentence, which is that obviously domain expertise is critical. Verticals are critical. However, I don't agree with the second part of the sentence, which is that, you know, do not invest in horizontal domains. I would say, well, if I had to rephrase that end of the sentence, I would say you should invest in horizontal engagement, collaboration, not stay in the silo of translation. That's what I would do and I would say here. But definitely I like this quote because coming from one of the big tech guys, you know, this is kind of recognizing that LLMs are not going to be the miracle that some people expect. LLMs without humans, without, you know, testing, without validation, without balancing, is not going to deliver what some people would expect as a miracle, as I said. Sometimes it's kind of disturbing to hear some people talk about AI and say, well, AI is there now, you know, my life is going to be so much better by default. I have a doubt, but okay. So, having said that, to put that into practice, I like to say to you in the room, by the way, how many people are translators in the room? Can you raise the hand? Oh, perfect. So perfect, well, maybe perfect. We'll see in a minute. But this is really for you. I would say welcome to you as a language expert, not just as a translator. If you get the question, who are you? You should say, I'm a language expert. And if you get the question, what do? You might say, I'm translating. Be and do are two different things. So, what I did with my previous teams, I started doing that 15 years ago, and it was not so popular at that time in my company. I said that, obviously, translation, localization should be embedded, should be elevated, again, in a bigger framework. And I leveraged something that most HR people, if you are in human resources, you know that, sometimes they want to recruit T-shaped people. What is a T-shaped person? It's a person who has vertical expertise, that's the vertical of the T, and who has horizontal skills, competencies, that's the horizontal part. And obviously, something that is really interesting when I leveraged that model for my team, I said, okay, it's obvious that we all have expertise. In my team, there were experts in translation, in engineering, in UX, etc. So language expertise in the broad sense. But I said at the same time, what we need to elevate ourselves as a team, so not just me as a leader, but the whole team, is actually to improve, to increase the collaboration with other parts of the business, or part of the organization. Sorry, I mentioned business. So, but yeah, this is really what I mean here, is to obviously make an effort. It's sometimes not easy, just because, of course, some organizations are not always welcoming that model. I know that. Sometimes I had to fight to be bold, to be rational, to explain that that model for linguists, language professionals, was much better than only translators. And something else I would like to mention about this model is that today I hear a lot of people talk about shift left. Go to more the creative part, the creation part. I agree with that, of course, yes. But there are also opportunities by shifting right. And that's what I call moving up the value chain. If you are considering you as a language professional, today you might be translating, reviewing, spending your time on MTPE. Yes, okay. And then suddenly you have an opportunity to work with the creation team, the designers, the developers, because you know that source content is going to be better for you and for them. So you bring your language expertise and you say, okay, you consider me as a linguist, as a translator, but actually my expertise goes beyond what I'm doing today. So let's work together. And I brought a number of language professionals together with developers, designers, very tech people. And sometimes those language professionals were a bit afraid of that. They said, oh, no, I don't want to talk to the IT guys, I don't want to talk to the tech guys, because it's not my area, I don't feel comfortable. And I said, no, come, just come, and see what we can do together. And I think that's really where, I welcome the T-shaped language expert. And I do, if I had one piece of advice to give, after that I stop, I promise, is that if you really want to embrace the change that is going on in the translation industry, is to turn yourself from a translator into a language expert. Because that's, thank you again. All right, well, 2 people this time. I'm getting better, so be patient. At the end, there will be more than 10 people cheering, so that's good. Sorry, I have to drink a little bit. So, that is the T-shaped language expert model. Oh, sorry, language model. So that is really, for me, it's not the future, it's now. And it's not only now, but it's, I would say, it becomes every day important for language professionals to expand and to demonstrate, not just expand, because, yeah, you might say, as a language professional, you might talk to a UX person or to a creative person or to a testing person, if you shift right. You might say, you know what, I have language expertise. Yeah, but okay, if it's a nice colleague, you might say, oh yeah, I believe you, but most people are not so nice colleagues, at least in my experience. And of course, you have to demonstrate that. You have to measure it, going back to value creation. So I told you, I was going to mention value a lot today. So, that is my, as I said, probably my only piece of advice for today, because I don't want to sound too arrogant. But now about AI, because obviously when I say to people, to language professionals, you know what? AI can be really your best elevator. People think that I'm really crazy. They think like, oh yeah, he must be drunk, or he must be in a different space, he must be in a different dimension. But I mean it. I mean that AI is a true elevator for, not just because of value creation, but for the essence of language expertise. And this is where I'm using this analogy, that's my own terminology, about the AI highway. The AI highway, I call it highway, because it's like a journey where there are many people, not driving, but running. So it's kind of busy. It's a busy highway, just like Brussels at the peak hours. So it's really something that, for me, has to be more than understood. It has to be leveraged. And what I mean is that when you think about AI, generative AI, I'm going to be accurate here, generative AI, at the end, what needs to be delivered is value creation, so what I call language intelligence. But when you think about the different steps, the major steps, to get there, to get to generative AI value creation, it starts with assets. In many organizations today, and probably tomorrow as well, there is a need to convert a number of digital assets, PowerPoint, video files, audio files, that, there is a need to convert all these assets into data, language data. Language data is where I spend 60% of my time now. And there is a reason for that. It's because, first of all, I leverage my experience in data management, but also because clients are asking for it. Many organizations are asking, can you please help us with language data? Not just the creation of data, but the conversion from assets into data. And guess what? It's not just for data scientists. It's also for language professionals. Working together, that's my personal perspective, but there is definitely a need for language expertise already there, at that point in time, not at the end when the output from generative AI is being checked. Assets. Step number 1, data. In language data, you have the word language. So again, data expertise is needed, but language expertise is needed as well. Most of all because language data is going to be data that's going to be really critical for the whole effectiveness of not just the model, but also the prompting and, at the end of the cycle, the generation itself. So data and language data is really also an area where language professionals, and I have a few examples in the slides a bit later on. It's also a place where, you know, or an area where language professionals are definitely more than useful, they are even critical, in my opinion. And there are a number of opportunities. In Asia, there is a demand right now for some Asian language into, a demand for language data experts in those languages. Prompts. I'm sorry, it's a bit hidden, but yeah, I didn't realize it was a bit hidden by, by a graphic. But prompts, yes. I think yesterday, I cannot remember who it was, but somebody mentioned that in the DGT there was a team dedicated to prompting. Is that right? Yeah? Okay. But that's great. That's really great. You are better than a number of private organizations, private sector organizations. Because obviously, it's always easy to blame the model for not working. That's what many people are doing. They said, oh, I invested millions in ChatGPT or in some small models, and my models don't work. But they don't look upstream. They blame the model as if the model was the only responsible for poor quality. But no, because if there is poor data, if prompting is not also managed from a language perspective, there is a problem. There will be a problem. Interestingly, I think it was a few weeks ago, there was a very interesting report from Anthropic. And it was a report on data, language data management. And in this report, they were using a few use cases, they were referring to a few use cases about data poisoning, which I used to call data pollution. And data poisoning was actually that they could demonstrate by changing just one word in a prompt, just one. You could create bias in the whole content that's going to be generated. Just one word. And of course, who can define which word to use best? It is language professionals. I love that report. Well, if you don't see it, you can contact me on LinkedIn. I will be sending you the link. But definitely, again, this is a way to demonstrate the value of language expertise in AI. So AI is not your enemy. AI can be your, I wouldn't say best friend, would be a bit too much. It can be your friend, can be your companion to elevate what you do, to elevate the value of language quality and effectiveness to the level that is expected by your stakeholders and your clients, more generally speaking. So, as I said, there are quite, oh yeah, that's right. There is a second question. Second question about, your perspective on the use of AI in the next 2 years. I know it's difficult to project yourself in the next 2 years, but just try for this purpose. What would you use AI for? There are, of course, some choices. They are all positive this time, so there is no negative answer. But just to take the pulse of what you think about the potential use of AI in the near future. And all of the above, that's really great. Wow, I have really a great audience today. Usually I don't have that number in other presentations, in other organizations. People are more hesitating, inspiration is good, but so that's really great. It proves to me, again, that language professionals are really great. So really, really, really important to make the best use possible. Yeah, it looks like there is a large majority for all of the above. So probably you already know the value and the value and the role that AI can play in your elevation. That's good. I hope I haven't talked for so many minutes for nothing, but I hope that hopefully you will continue, because indeed, I mentioned inspiration, because inspiration is really great in AI. Regardless of the model that you use, and of course it has to be an effective model based on, as I said, effective data, effective prompting. But if everything is in place to deliver quality and to deliver effectiveness, really generative AI can be a great help, just because obviously, not for this presentation, but for some other presentations, I sometimes hesitate and I cannot find even some words, and I say, let's ask Claude, which is my private model. But we can do the same with ChatGPT. And I think that inspiration is something not to be ignored, even for language professionals, because if you are always inspired, you might be lucky, and I would like to work with you, because I need people being inspired around me. But obviously this time, it's more about combining the different facets of value of generative AI. So that is why it's good to see that. So back to the presentation. So again, talking about elevation of language quality and effectiveness. There are a number of tasks that have been created or that will be created. This is just a sample. So don't get me wrong, this is not the sort of catalog of all activities, all tasks that language professionals could really consider for their elevation. I just mentioned here what I've seen the most so far. But of course, I see more and more roles related to AI agents. But the purpose here is just to say that, when you look at language effectiveness, quality and effectiveness, from a broader perspective, and certainly from a value creation perspective, you can really see that these activities, new or, well, not so new or future new, are going to be really valuable for most language experts. And obviously, I know some people say to me that, yeah, but data annotation is a low-level task, just because they see some people in China or India, trying to annotate data. Yes, of course, this is the dark side of data annotation. But the bright side of data annotation, and of course data curation, is of course very critical. So it's not because you see some sort of, slavery factory or whatever, that you have to believe that annotation, curation is done by just pairs of hands. No, you need pairs of hands, and you need a good brain. And a good brain is in the language professionals. So again, all these, new and augmented tasks are really where language professionals can, not just find value, but demonstrate value. I think somebody mentioned yesterday the importance of data curation. Well, I cannot agree more than with that person, because in my experience, obviously I work a lot with data scientists, and there is a myth or there is a belief that data scientists should own and keep control of all language data because they are the data experts. I agree they are the data experts, but because generative AI is based on language data, they should not work alone. And I spend some time, sometimes it's just a few hours, sometimes it's days, convincing CTOs, CIOs, that their data science team should team up with language services teams, language professionals, just because there is value in each team. Data expertise, language expertise. So obviously, it's not just operational, sometimes it's a little bit organizational and even political. But at the end of the day, I think it's a great way also to share that if you consider those new tasks as a language professional, you will have to demonstrate, you will have to explain the rationale why you should be part of that, we should be doing that, why it shouldn't be a multilingual data annotator who could be only responsible for that. You know what, it reminds me when I was starting my career as a translator, a client told me that he was hesitating to pay for translation because he had a personal assistant who was multilingual. And I said, yeah, but what's the point? Your assistant is multilingual, but is she a linguist? Is she a translator? And his answer was no, but she's multilingual. Oh, okay, well, life can be so easy for people who don't really realize when there is value and where there is value, not just when. So I think that these are just examples of where it can really be relevant, critical value to expand and to explore. You can even experiment. You don't have to go straight away to that. But again, if you look at the roles themselves, so I mentioned here again a few examples. Wow, I love this flashy green. It wasn't on my slide, but it's really flashy. Wow, DGT is really impressing me now. Okay, thank you. No, but what I wanted to say here is that this is for me also a sign that the translation industry is moving or has to move to more than what she's doing today. And the direction, I see two directions. Knowledge management. Knowledge management is important in every organization. There is no single organization, private, public, that can say, oh, I don't care about my knowledge. It's there, we don't know where, when, who is doing it, etc. So I think that a number of these roles are close to knowledge management. The second direction is data management. Data management, as I said before, this is because language data is absolutely necessary. So that is also something to bear in mind if you are an ambitious, I'm sure you are all ambitious, language expert. And just to finish on time, which I will try to do, is, I also consider quality as a good indicator, not just as a good indicator of effectiveness, but as a good indicator of bigger problems. It reminds me this famous say that when people talk about content management issues, there are content issues and there are management issues. So here, I tend to use quality issues as a sign, just like canary in a mine, to say, well, there are bigger problems of management, bigger problems of some specific tasks like terminology, like processes. So I think that, sometimes, I'm going to be hated by some of you here, but sometimes quality issues are good because they can be used to demonstrate what is wrong, not just as quality, because again, don't blame quality, blame what happened before, blame what was missing before. So, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you will have some questions.
Thank you, Bruno. Lots of useful things in there for our audience. I know a lot of you are translators, freelance translators. It's very high on the percentage of people listening. So let's go for some questions. Do we have questions in the room to begin with? Yes, several there. Gentleman in the middle. Yes, yeah.
Good morning, Bruno. This is Kirill from Content Quo again. Thank you very much for the overview of the services that linguists can provide. I felt that there's one huge thing actually missing here, and I understand why. It's very new, but I would call this the elephant in the room, and that is vibe coding. So non-linguists have a unique opportunity not just to create or curate data, which is something we could do for maybe the past 5-6 years, but to build entire software experiences with their skills for language. And I think that could be a very new, powerful driver of work, business, and lifestyle, whatever. Wondering what your thoughts about that exciting new direction are.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And it's an intentional miss. Just like agents, I didn't want to go into that. But I totally agree with you. That's another field where language expertise can be and should be leveraged. And it's a bit like data management. When I say that professional linguists have opportunities in data management. Some people think that I'm just dreaming, that I'm just bluffing. But actually, data management, of course, it's something that sounds very technical, and it is technical. But when you think about the nature of data that is used for generative AI, so, of course, language data or linguistic data, I think you mentioned yesterday, linguistic. But I never know which one is the best, but I use language data. So I explained that language is part of that. So again, for the new roles regarding coding, I think it's the same thing. You need to have, in many cases, you will need more and more, because you're right, it's rather new, and it's not applicable to every organization, but actually you see more and more the eye of language professionals getting value or bringing value to the process. So I totally agree with you, and I agree it was a miss, but I had to make a choice to stick to a number of slides that could be digestible. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's excellent. We have more content for coming Translating Europe forums. That's very good.
Perfect.
So we had another question just close by here. Yes? Yeah?
Hi. Sorry, I don't like speaking in public, just so you know. This is a very pragmatic approach to translation, very data-oriented. But yesterday we saw how the creative process is hindered by AI use. And when you show the highway, I like to see myself when I start a translation as being at a crossroads and having to decide which way to take. But AI kind of sets you on a highway, and it might be the wrong one. You never know. Like, it's very biased in the way that it approaches translation. And sometimes you might go in a direction that would not have been the direction you would have been going on if you had that crossroad in the beginning. So I'm wondering how you mitigate that risk of losing that richness, that culture, actually, like the richness of culture in translation. Because we're not just data analysts or curators, we're also cultural embodiments. And, well, that's part of what I appreciate about translation. And without that, I'm not sure I want to be in this field, so.
I think there was also a question on Slido, which was a little bit in the same, it's not visible here yet, but it was about, can it not only augment quality AI, but also, yes.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And that's why, before talking about AI, I talked about the baseline for me, which was linguistic, cultural, and functional. So I don't lose that mind. But in my experience, you're right. It can be not so immediately enriching, to your point, that you would say, yes, I'm really leveraging all my expertise. I might be sort of put in a direction where I don't control many things. That's what some language professionals are feeling today when they manage language data. But I don't have examples. I didn't want to use, some more technical examples. But I'm happy to show you examples where the language professionals have this, I wouldn't say freedom, but they have this ability to, go beyond what's biased and actually to make a point. And that's why I mentioned the report from Anthropic that was shared. And this is kind of interesting, coming from Anthropic. One of these tech leaders in LLMs, that they admitted that one word could change the whole generation, just one, and they didn't say, of course, in the report that language professionals had to do it, but that was the message from me, that of course, who is best positioned to avoid bias or to reduce bias than language professionals. I don't think that many data scientists would be able to do that. That's my experience, and I love working with data scientists. So to your point, it depends on the context. I would agree that when I'm talking, I ran a workshop with language professionals in Germany a few weeks ago, and they were also not asking, but sometimes they were questioning, challenging me about, oh, Bruno, you're talking about great opportunities in language data management, but is it not just to have the sort of excuse to use professional expertise and still being biased anyway? But actually, it depends on how you are sort of embedded in the process. It can be the highway where you are put and you say, this is where you need to go. And of course, it becomes difficult to manage, to be in control of, reducing the bias or not. But what I'm preaching for, what I'm doing with my peers and in my projects, is actually to give more ability. I wouldn't use the word freedom because that would be too strong, but the ability to maximize the leverage of their expertise, considering the requirements from the client. Of course, I have to stay aware of that. So I would say don't leave the translation field. I'm sure you will find ways and you will find places where your expertise will not just be a pretext or an excuse for just saying, we have a language expert in the room, so everything is going to be all right, and still put you like in a golden cage, if you know what I mean in this case. So I understand your feeling, but I would say don't believe that it's going to be all too difficult or too challenging by default. It might be, it might not be. It depends on where you are and who you work with as well.
We've briefly touched on bias. So looking forward to the TEF talk this afternoon about bias. But we'll leave it on the side.
Okay.
There are two questions that are related on Slido that I'd really like you to consider. The first one is translators positioning themselves as language experts would imply to shift from a per-word price to a value-based price. Is the industry as a whole, especially LSPs, ready for this shift, putting expertise again at the forefront? And then Yota's question, what model would you advise LSPs to use when they sell their translation services? Because many people, there you go, including herself, think that the word models are outdated.
Okay, so for the first question, I don't see it anymore. Where is it?
It's the second one.
Oh, the second. Oh, yeah.
No, it's not first.
The first.
Yeah, well,
Don't
switch it
make it
again.
too difficult for me, please. It's just like, okay. No, well, actually, this is why I said I don't want to open the discussion now about the pricing model, cost per word versus outcome-based, performance-based. But I think that if the question is, are LSPs ready for that? Considering the audience here and online, I would say not everyone is ready for it. And the reason why some LSPs are not, or most LSPs, let's be honest, most LSPs are still not ready for it, is because they are still focused too much on vanity metrics, production metrics, productivity metrics. And I think, again, these metrics are necessary, but working with their clients, and this is also important for buyers, by the way, because we talk here about pricing models for LSPs, but it has a reflection on buyers on cost models. Because of course, as a buyer, I had to justify the cost of my budget. So, if I know that, obviously, I'm not sticking to a commodity-based rate per word, and I'm actually considering for myself, for my own budget, another indicator or another perspective to, justify the cost model in the buyer, then of course I can work more easily with LSPs. And that's so, I would say it's not just a matter of LSPs not being ready. I think there are a number of buyers not being ready. That's another thing. So that's, and the second, what model? That's going to be very subjective. Personally, I worked being in the life science industry, I work a lot with SLMs, small language models, for a number of reasons: cost effectiveness, time effectiveness, domain sensitivity. So I'm not going to go into that, but when it's about large models, my biggest preference for the moment is Claude, definitely.
Okay.
Follow-up question?
Well, we had Julia there. Sorry, yes, but Julia was...
Is that active? So I just wanted to answer to the young woman who made a point earlier. I just please hold on to your energy. You don't need to conform to win. Actually, when everyone else will conform, your value will be stronger.
And please continue the discussion also over lunch and so on for these kind of follow-ups. Did you have...
Yeah, Christopher, you would wanted to say something?
It will, I think so.
If we wave at the tech booth. Now.
Okay, perhaps just to get back to the question, I think it's not about the LSPs ready to go to a value-based pricing. As a client, I am a client, You have to basically explain to your departments ordering translations and also to your accounting, to your budgeting forecast, what you allocate as a translation budget. And if you say, well, I don't know how much we allocate, it's just value-based, it's not going through. So clients need to stick to word-based prices or line prices, because otherwise this is a business. We work in a business. We spend millions of euros on translations. You can't come with it's a value-based approach. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And obviously, that's why I mentioned that I stopped using quality years ago, because to make progress in my discussion, in my organizations, I start using effectiveness and value creation to show, to demonstrate to my stakeholders, then it was much more than just commodity. It was critical value that, if it was missing, would actually spoil a whole product, whole experience. So absolutely right. This, on the buyer side, there has to be more brave people. Might consider myself as brave because I did that many years. Sometimes it's frustrating. I agree with you, and well, we discussed that, offline. But that's part of the problem. I said it's not just one person or one side to blame. I think there is much more room for collaboration and mutual understanding.
Thank you. Maybe we have time for one
more
final question there. So.
Thank you. Bruno, hi.
Hi,
Agustin here. So is the, let's say for millennia, in the aspects of translations and localization, what we had is the concept of starting from a source. Mm-hmm. Let's say there is a defined source that has been created in a given based language that already has intentions on a particular audience and all that, and in many cases not necessarily neutral. Culturally, we are talking about the production of value. Mm-hmm. What's your take on generating content directly based on semantics rather than on a fixed source?
Great question. And I remember we had a chance to talk about that in the US. Yes, actually, that's another part of... I didn't want, again, to dive into everything, but you're right. This is another option, because, of course, there are some stakeholders asking me today, why should I actually consider translation localization? Because I can create content from scratch in different languages. And actually, without going through translation localization, they don't see the value anymore. The value of translation localization as a necessary step. My answer to that is that indeed, you're right. It is an option for multilingual content management to go through what you call the semantic channel. But I would say, I agree with you, provided that the semantics are well managed. It's like the data. Again, you have to look at, and well, you know it, I don't have to tell you, but I would say my main advice would be always look upstream. Or don't blame the model, don't blame the prompt without looking at the data. Again, don't blame the semantics for not doing a good job, because you might not know how were semantics really managed, well or not. So to your point, in some cases I would say go for it, but first, before answering your question, I would ask you, Agustin, can you tell me more about the semantics, how they were created and also managed? So, and then I can give you a more accurate and honest answer. But yeah, definitely another topic. Yep.
Thank you very much, Bruno.
Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to... Yes, okay.